Dr. Wendy Suzuki, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ben. I am so excited to be here.
Well, the feeling is mutual. This was so fun to prep for, and I learned loads. I want to start with the brain-changing benefits of exercise.
Yes.
So, what happens to our brains immediately during exercise, and then the sort of the hours after, and then maybe we can focus on the prolonged benefits of maintained regular exercise.
Right. So the image that I love to give about what's happening to your brain during and immediately after exercise is that moving your body, moving your muscles in any way, including walking, any way, dancing, gardening, whatever way you move your muscles, especially if you get a little bit of aerobic activity, your heart rate goes up a little bit, you are releasing a whole bunch of neurochemicals in your brain. I like to call it a neurochemical bubble bath for your brain. And I just love that image. And I love it because that is the motivating image I use every single morning when I'm doing my morning workout, whether I have 10 minutes or my regular 30 minutes to do it. It's like, okay, my brain needs that bubble bath of neurochemicals. And the neurochemicals that you are releasing are neurochemicals that you've heard about. Dopamine, noradrenaline, serotonin, endorphins. These are neurochemicals that are making you feel good and rewarded and happy. And that's how I want to feel first thing in the morning when I do my workout. But it doesn't matter. Everybody says, oh, is that the only time I can work out? And the answer is the best time to work out is whenever you can move your body. That is the best time to do it. Chemicals are still released. You still get that good feeling. So just do it whenever you can. And so it has 3 immediate effects that come on immediately after you are moving your body. 1, your mood goes up, in the sense that 10 minutes of walking has shown to significantly decrease anxiety and depression levels. That's the first thing. Second thing, your ability to shift and focus your attention, dependent on the prefrontal cortex right behind your forehead, gets significantly better. So you need to focus on something like your work or a lecture or a podcast that you're doing. Go for a walk. And that will make your prefrontal cortex and your attention center of your brain work better. And your response time. So I'm going to be answering all of your questions today, your fascinating questions. And because I did my workout, my response time is going to be faster than it was if I hadn't done my workout. But long term, let's say you don't just do one walk, but you do it regularly over time, you are getting regular bubble baths for your brain. And that's when you start to get the real amazing long-term benefits. Because the other thing in that neurochemical bubble bath are growth factors. And those growth factors go directly to your memory center of your brain called the hippocampus and literally help grow shiny new hippocampal cells in your hippocampus. So that is my other motivation, because I want what I like to call a big fat fluffy hippocampus. So my memory is very good.
Me too. I desperately want that. Although I've failed already, because before this podcast I didn't go on a walk. I just did loads of push-ups. Does that do the same thing? It did a bit. Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It did.
Well, then that worked.
Okay, great. Wonderful. So my next question is exercise. I know I want to get into the types of exercise you do, and I love reading about that in your book. But what exercise can we do? So you said walking's good, aerobic exercise is good. Lifting weights, does that do it?
So, there have been, I would say, mixed results about the specific benefits of more anaerobic workout. But, my favorite workout is a cardio weights workout where you're getting some, weightlifting plus cardio. We know that increased heart rate is really useful. And frankly, unless you're standing completely still and just trying, the heart rate does go up with that effort. So I can't say for sure whether weightlifting alone is good, but if you get weightlifting that includes some increase in heart rate, yes, we know that is good.
So double clicking on the growth factors. So when you exercise, you get the neurochemicals like dopamine you mentioned, serotonin you mentioned, but the growth factors specifically, BDNF. Could you tell us a bit about BDNF?
Yeah. BDNF, yes. I would love to tell you about BDNF. So BDNF stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And it is a growth factor that we know a lot about. It is critical during the development of the early brain. It helps brand new baby brain cells find their way, so the output of the brain cells, called the axon, can find its way to its actual target. Critical for that. But an adult brain, I don't have baby brain cells, finding their way, except in brain areas that grow in adulthood. There's only two of them. One is the olfactory bulb, where important for smell, and the other is my favorite brain structure called the hippocampus, critical for our ability to form and retain new long-term memories for facts and events. And BDNF in adulthood that gets stimulated by aerobic exercise goes directly to the hippocampus, and it helps those brand new baby brain cells that are growing in the hippocampus grow bigger and fatter and fluffier, and make your whole hippocampus bigger and fatter and fluffier. And more importantly, makes your memory work better. So I don't know anybody who doesn't want a better working memory. And so this is a free thing. I'm telling you, this is you don't need any money. You don't need to pay any money to go on a power walk. And that is going to get you that increased heart rate, physical activity that will stimulate BDNF. And eventually, if you do it regularly enough, will get you a big, fat, fluffy hippocampus.
Okay, that's great. I find the mechanisms quite fun to understand. I think it solidifies a why to these things a bit more.
Yes.
I've heard lactate, anything that produces, lactic, like
Yeah.
lactic acid,
Yeah.
is a pathway to boost BDNF. When it comes to types of exercise, can you tell us more about how, well, if A, is that true? And then B, does that inform the type of exercise we should be doing?
Do you mean lactate is part of the chemical pathway to synthesize BDNF?
I've heard that there's a link between training that stimulates lactic acid and BDNF. I don't know if you've heard of that, or if
I haven't heard of that specifically. The ones that have been studied the most, let me tell you about those, are myokines, are proteins that are released by muscles, like our striated muscles that work, our legs and our arm muscles. So myokines are released whenever we're using our muscles in whatever way. Imagine a runner. So you get lots of myokines being released. The myokines then get synthesized into BDNF peripherally, outside the brain. They go through the blood-brain barrier, which is a special protector between the circulation of the body and the circulation of the brain, which is protected because you don't want anything and everything going through your to your brain. But that BDNF, synthesized BDNF, does, and it goes directly to your hippocampus and helps the growth. There are also ketone bodies that you've heard of from physiology that get released from your liver during exercise, and those ketone bodies also get synthesized into BDNF and go through the blood-brain barrier and go directly to your hippocampus. So there are muscle pathways that get activated when you're moving, and liver metabolic pathways that get activated when you are exercising, that both kind of go down into synthesizing BDNF that ups the BDNF in your brain.
Okay, wonderful. That's good to know. When it comes to mitigating against stress, how does exercise play a role?
Yeah. So exercise plays a role in stress because it's a little paradoxical, because every time you're working out, your cortisol in your brain actually goes up, and you think, oh my God, I don't want increased cortisol in my brain. That is the bad stress hormone. But cortisol is critical during workouts for metabolic reasons. Cortisol is releasing the sugars that you need for your muscles to work well. So you can't, find that metabolic energy to move your body in if you're a runner without the cortisol. But the other thing that's going up in your brain, as I just said, with exercise and that neurochemical bubble bath, are things that do decrease your stress levels, like higher dopamine levels, higher serotonin levels, higher endorphin levels. So one of the major ways that exercise is decreasing stress is by putting you in a better mood. That is why anxiety and depression levels go down after a single 10-minute walk.
Love hearing that. It's I think when, again, go back to the why, it only adds motivation to do these things more, I think.
Exactly. Just
With
10 minutes of walking is will improve your mood.
There you go. There you go. I really enjoyed reading about your own experience with meditation
Yes.
in your wonderful book, Healthy Brain, Happy Life.
Mm.
Um, how do the benefits of meditation show up in the brain and then in everyday life?
Yeah. Okay. So there have been some beautiful studies. I love this story because it's inspired by the encouragement of the Dalai Lama, who every year at the Society for Neuroscience meeting, which is the largest international society for neuroscience. Now I'm getting really nerdy. So I go to the International Society for Neuroscience, and at the beginning of every meeting, they have a non-scientist address the society around topics that are important. For example, Christopher Reeve came after his accident to talk about neuroregeneration and all the work and all the money that he raised for that. Well, my favorite, I loved Christopher Reeve. He was very, very inspirational. But my very favorite speaker that they had was the Dalai Lama, who came to speak about his support for neuroscience, his support of science, and his support of the study of the benefits of meditation for the brain. And he's collaborated with a wonderful neuroscientist, Richard Davidson, who's done some beautiful work, he and his team, on what happens in your brain when you start meditating regularly. And many, many different brain areas get activated during meditation. But the one that grows, everyone wants to know, like, what gets bigger? What changes? And it is part of the prefrontal cortex, not surprisingly, because anybody who has even tried meditation knows that it is an exercise in trying to pay attention to something and focus that attention, whether it's on your breath, whether it's on a phrase like loving kindness meditation, you think about loving kindness and the feeling of loving kindness, or some other object that you focus your attention on. It is a practice of focusing your attention and keeping it there for quite a long time. The most common one is keeping it on your breath, just inhaling and exhaling. And it turns out that those very, very experienced meditators have not only a larger area 10 of the prefrontal cortex, but the entire neurophysiology of their brains are changed from normal non-monk meditators, and they're changed in a specific way. The gamma level of, which is a particular frequency of activation in the brain, goes through the roof. I mean, studies that Richard Davidson's group did showed that the gamma levels had never been seen that high in non-clinical populations. If you have epilepsy, you have high levels of gamma with everything else. But this was just they put the EEG cap on the monks, and they said, meditate now. And their gamma waves went through the roof. That took training. How much training? Between 10,000 and 30,000 hours of meditation that these monks, I mean, they were real monks, had. It was quite extraordinary, but it showed the power of the thing that I've studied for my entire neuroscience career, which is brain plasticity. That is the ability of the brain to shift and change in response to your environment. The monks put themselves in a meditative environment. They were meditating for hours and hours. The majority of their day was meditation. And one of the things I learned from that paper is that monks, their goal is to be in a meditative state all the time. So it's a little odd to say, start meditating now. It's like, I'm already meditating. Yeah, I'm already in a state of meditation, just to show, how it changes their whole existence. Those were the people whose brain activation changed, but it was significantly different from the 10 volunteers that they got that had never meditated before. They gave them something like 5 days of meditation training, and they kind of pitted them against the 10,000-hour monks. Were there differences? Yes, huge differences. But what does that show? That shows the brain can change in response to what you do to it. Every single day, what you do is changing the way your brain works.
That's the lovely uplifting message of how plastic the brain is. Actually,
Yes.
on that, just while we're on it, what's the biggest misconception people have about neuroplasticity?
The biggest, I'm still just trying to educate people about what neuroplasticity is. I don't think there's enough deep understanding. Maybe the biggest misconception, and I might contribute to this, is that brain plasticity is only the positive way, but it's the negative way as well. You can, instead of being a monk, you can be a scroller and a TV watcher. All of the same number of hours that the monks are meditating, you are scrolling and you're watching your TV. Does that change your brain? Yes, it does. And what it tends to do, particularly we know from scrolling, it shortens your attention span. The monk's attention span is expanded. And does that have an effect on your brain? Yes, it does. Nobody's done a study, so I can't tell you which frequency of wave is different. But I will guess that the gamma waves are significantly different between a regular scroller and the monks.
Okay, so when it comes to exercise versus meditation, right,
Yeah.
and benefits for the brain, does meditation hold up towards exercise as giving the same benefits for
Mm.
starting a regular practice, or is exercise a clear winner?
So I love that question because I had to do a blog post for Psychology Today. I was like, what am I going to do? It's like, okay, my blog post is an exercise meditation smackdown. Like if I wrote it like it's a wrestling match, and who's going to win? Exercise for their brain benefits or meditation for their brain benefits? And the surprising thing is that they're so different, such different activities. Exercise is movement, the bigger the movement, the better. And meditation is the quiet. There are so many similar benefits. That is, both exercise and meditation decrease your anxiety and your depression levels. So you get the same benefits there. There are the difference is that we know a lot more about the why, the nitty gritty of the neurobiological effects of exercise. Frankly, because it's easier to study it in experimental situations. Exercise, or it's easy to get a rat to run. It's very difficult to get a rat to meditate. And we have humans that meditate, but you can't do the same experiments on humans that you do in rats. I can show that meditators' brains, human meditators, have a larger area 10. But maybe there's something different about those area 10 cells. Maybe the connections are different. I can't study that. So what was my conclusion from that blog post? That both are beautifully beneficial. I personally have added both into my long-term brain health plan that I do daily. But I do lean into exercise because we know about the hippocampal building effects of exercise, that it will grow new cells in the hippocampus, shown by many animal studies, and it will increase the size of your prefrontal cortex. Not in area 10, not in the same areas as the meditation areas, as you might expect. It's not identical to meditation, although people report meditative states in long distance running. So I had to conclude it's a tie between exercise and meditation, but we do know more about the neurobiological beneficial effects of exercise than meditation.
Well, thanks to you, right? That's you're someone to thank for that. I guess both for me and a lot of others, exercise can boost awareness in its own way, and meditation can boost awareness in its own way.
Yes.
Being aware of our internal monologues is sort of where I want to shift to next.
Mm.
And so my question for you: how do the narratives we tell ourselves shape our brains and in turn our reality?
Yeah. So the study of mindset has become really big in psychology these days. Before it was like, oh, that's a silly, fluffy thing to study. But the power of mindset to change the brain and change your behavior and change your physiology is very powerful. And I love to share in a lot of my talks that I give when I talk about the power of mindset. My favorite study is one that Aaliyah Crum did at Stanford, a Stanford psychologist. And she wanted to look at the effects of mindset on exercise and the effects of exercise on your physiology. And so she did this study in hotel workers. And she went to the big hotels that have many, many floors. And so their workers have to, clean the hotel rooms every day. And she put some of the hotels in the experimental group and the other hotels in the control group. And she went in to the experimental group, and it was only a 5-minute meeting. And she met with them. She told them not only that exercise is really good for your brain, it's good for your health, but she told them that the Surgeon General had analyzed the level of activity that they, as hotel workers, do every day to scrub the floor and mop and change the sheets, and that they were doing a significant amount of exercise that meets the standard, and they're getting all those health benefits. The Surgeon General, an authority figure, identified that for them. The other group, they were just told that exercise is good for your body and brain, but weren't told the effect about their particular form of exercise. That was the only intervention. They were left to go and do their work for 3 months. 3 months later, they what they found was not only was job satisfaction somehow better in the group that was told that their exercise was good. Oh, I forgot to say that neither group admitted to doing any exercise. They didn't have time. They didn't exercise at all. So it was meaningful, that piece of information, that their level of work was deemed by the Surgeon General to be meaningful. And so what they found is the people in the group that were told about the Surgeon General's description of their work, they had a better job satisfaction. Their hip to waist ratio was better. That is, their physique was better. They lost more weight. And the study wasn't even about their weight. It was about their attitudes towards exercise relative to, of course, that control group. So what changed? Their mindset changed. Their idea about what their exercise was doing for them. And I love that, because everybody can relate to, oh God, I wish I could lose more weight just by thinking a good thought. Well, the study shows that believing and knowing the science that you and I, Ben, are going over right now, can shape the way your body responds to even that 10-minute walk. If you know nothing about it, it's like, oh, I don't care. No, I don't notice anything. If you know that those studies are out there, it's like, oh, actually, I do notice that. You will be more mindful of that. And there will be a better awareness and a better appreciation, and maybe even a better effect of that on your brain.
What is intentional exercise?
Intentional exercise is, I would say it's equivalent to mindful exercise. I am doing this for a reason. And there's lots of reasons. I'm doing it because I need to lose weight. Not my favorite reason. I'm doing it because I know it's good for my health. Better reason, in my opinion. I'm doing it because I am my brain, and I want my brain to be healthy. And I know physical activity is really good for my brain. All of those things, being clear about why you're doing exercise is intentional exercise.
And when you're more intentional about that exercise, would that lead to greater change?
That's the idea, using the power of mindset. If you are intentional, and the example I always use is an example from my own personal experience, because I went through kind of an exercise renaissance, and I was there trying to do it because I was trying to get in shape, and I was not healthy, and I wanted to get more healthy. But I would go there, and I would go to whatever class, and I would just think about the burrito that I wanted to eat for dinner. Not the most mindful, but I became I did it enough to start feeling the positive effects. And I felt effects on my cognition and on my memory and on my attention. And I happen to be a neuroscientist. And then I got very intentional about, oh, let me go see exactly what's supposed to be going on. Let me see if I see this in myself. Am I doing it? How can I use this in the best way for me? And I got very intentional and very focused on what every minute of my workout was. And boy, I saw some amazing effects in my
I've
own
long been interested in the narratives we tell ourselves, and I
yeah,
guess, for lack of a better word, affirmations,
yeah,
especially during exercise. So I used to do lots of competitive CrossFit, and when it gets
ah,
really, really hard, I would just over in my head just say engine, and the
uh,
connotations of engine for me, I didn't
yeah,
know it helped psychologically.
yeah,
Tell me about Intensati and how you came about that and what it
yeah.
is.
So I discovered Intensati after I went to the gym. I was really unhealthy. I was unhealthy because I was trying to get tenure, and I just decided to work all the time. So I ate a lot of takeout, and I didn't move my body at all. I just went from work to home, and maybe most terribly for my life, I didn't have any friends. I mean, I had colleagues in the lab. I ran the lab. There were students. I had students, but not a lot of social friends. And I knew something had to change. I went on a river rafting trip, and I met a lot of fun, fit people. I was like, okay, I want to feel better and feel more fit, and that's what took me to the gym. And so I was flailing around, finding classes that I liked that I could do. And I failed miserably in some classes, like the hip hop class that I went to. Oh my gosh, still not very good at hip hop. But one evening, I went to the gym and I had the choice between boot camp and Intensati. And boot camp just sounded too hard. So I went to this other class that I didn't know what it was. So I went to this class, Intensati. Inten stands for intention. Sati means awareness or mindfulness. And Intensati is a class developed by a wonderful fitness instructor, Patricia Moreno, that combines physical movements from kickbox and dance and yoga and martial arts. But the unique thing that she brought is she combines each move with a positive spoken affirmation. So when you're punching back and forth, just front punches, we would not just punch back and forth. We would say, I am strong now. And, or, I'm inspired. I believe I will succeed. And, it was ridiculous. I felt ridiculous that first day. And I'm looking around. It's like, are people really going to do this? And to my great shock, everybody was like, they weren't just doing it. They were yelling out these affirmations. They were really into it. And then I realized nobody's looking at me. Nobody cares whether I'm doing it or not. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll try and whisper it. so I don't feel so ridiculous. Well, by the end, I was getting into it too. And it was an hour of sweaty affirmations, shouting, just, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm just going to shout these affirmations. And I came out of that class completely high. It's like, I can't wait to go back to that class. And I can't wait to see the next set of affirmations that she's going to make me shout. I'll shout whatever you want me to shout. I'll do it because it's so much fun. And that's the class that really, really got me to be a regular gym goer because I loved it so much. And then I loved it so much that I decided I want to learn how to teach this class. But that's a story of Intensati.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's so powerful when you have someone who's been in the weeds of this for your whole career and all the things you can quantify, but then you have a nod to the things you can't necessarily quantify, like meditation, like the power of an
Yes.
affirmation.
Yes.
And I think you being vocal about your story with that maybe gives permission for others to explore it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So my big, I was struck with a very weird belief, which was sort of my misconception around
Mm.
neuroplasticity,
Mm.
which was I have until 25 and then it's
Oh.
off, and
Oh.
I'm done. And what that did was from 20 to 25, I started my first business, and I felt so behind the curve
Oh.
that I have to cram the next 5 years to learn as much as I could. So I really tried to learn as much as I could. I tried to read quite broadly and really spent a lot of time figuring out how can I get the best out of my brain.
Yeah.
And so, which brings me to my question. There's a nice line I like which frames it, which
Yeah.
is, if civilization can only progress when it learns the method of invention, you
Mm-hmm.
can only progress when you learn the method of learning. So
Mm-hmm.
Wendy Suzuki, as someone who spent a whole career studying this and
Yeah.
memory and attention, all this stuff, what is your own method to learning new things, and how has it changed over time?
Ooh, what an interesting question. So I love learning new things, and I think that the biggest way it's changed is I have a much bigger sense of fun in my learning now than I used to. I was very mean to myself early on, kind of like you. You better do it. You know, you only have these 4 years in college, or you only have these years in graduate school. You better get it done. And I used it to motivate myself, but I was a very mean master of my own self, and I didn't need to be. Um, um, and so today um, like I started a new job as dean of the College of Arts and Science at New York University, which is the largest private undergraduate college in the country. So I'm in charge of 9,000 students, and I could have gone back to I'm only going to work and but instead, to reward myself, I did something that I had always wanted to do, which is I started singing lessons. And talk about beginner mindset. You know, I have gotten away from, I haven't been a beginner for a long time until I started the singing lessons, because I've always loved um, musicals. I grew up going to Broadway musicals, and I grew up admiring the people that could sing and act and dance. And I'm not taking acting lessons, but I've
Yeah.
always wanted to sing more. So anyway, um, it, it's with a sense of fun that I do almost all of my new learning now, and I encourage everybody to adopt that sense of fun as early as they can.
Neurochemically, would that support the ability to learn things faster or more efficiently?
Yes, because it goes to mindset, and you know, part of me, somebody when I told a neuroscience colleague that I had taken the training to be an exercise instructor, they said, "Yeah, you've always had the personality of a drill sergeant." I'm like, "What?" So part of me likes the regimentation of of that I grew myself up on. Um, but also I also respond. So and I respond well to that. I also respond well to fun, and that is the mindset. And I find that um, that's the difference. I do try and assess the situation. Sometimes it's not so fun, and so I draw on my drill sergeant motivation style. But if I could make it fun, I try and do. I always do the fun style. So and that has come with age and experience, and me deciding I like fun more than I like drill sergeant style.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I mean, I'm slowly learning that. Maybe I'll get there someday. But when it comes to sort of synthesis between ideas, how can we help uh, make connections better?
Ooh, that's such an interesting question. How do you make connections better? So, there I'm going to lean on my understanding of what the hippocampus does. So, the hippocampus, we have one on the right and one on the left there. It's in the temporal lobe. It's critical for our ability to learn and retain new long term memories for facts and events. But what it does is it is the brain's associator. It associates your name, Ben, with your face, Ben, because I'm watching you on this video interview. And so I will, if I run into you on the street of London, I will be able to recall your name. Um, and that's because the hippocampus is making that link, association, another word for connection. And so I think um, one way that associations happen better is by better use of the hippocampus. Hippocampus is also important for creativity and imagination, because creativity and imagination are really taking those ideas in your long-term memory and putting it together in brand new ways. So that's yet another motivation to wake up, do your aerobic heart rate raising exercise in the morning. So you have the biggest, fattest, fluffier creativity structure and memory structure and connection structure that you can have in your brain, which is
is that why you work out in the morning?
I work out in the morning because things don't interrupt me in the morning. If I leave it to the end of the day, which I used to do when I didn't have such a time demanding job, then things get interrupted and I go late and then I can't go because I'm too tired. But if I do it first thing in the morning, it never gets interrupted or very rarely gets interrupted.
Well, then I guess you also have the neurochemical bubble bath in your system ready to go for your day throughout, right?
Exactly. That is
Okay.
beneficial.
There we go. Okay, I'm learning. This is good for me. So, what? How can I want to ask? How can we get better at recalling things on the fly? But I feel like the hippocampus might have something to do with it, and
Yeah.
maybe practice. I'm not sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Practice helps. So, you know, practice makes perfect. And as my undergraduate advisor used to say, use it or lose it. So you want to get better at recalling people's names. Well, practice every single time and use the tools that we know that the hippocampus uses to put things in memory. So there are 4 things that you could do that that make new memories stick. One is repetition. So practice, practice, practice. That absolutely works. The hippocampus thrives on that. 2 is novelty. So if it's a novel situation, you tend to remember it better. Why? Because you need good attention to remember something. You don't remember something if you don't notice it in the background. Well, novel things are always brought to the forefront of our attention because they could be dangerous. So it's a kind of a survival thing, which helps explain why novel things are remembered better. 3rd is association. Can you associate the name Ben with another friend named Ben and make some sort of visual or cognitive link between you two? Association also works. There's a wonderful tool called the Memory Palace, where you remember unrelated lists of things by placing them visually in a spatial environment that you know very well, usually childhood home. So a laundry list, or not laundry list, but grocery lists. Bananas are by the front door. Blueberries are on the piano bench, and your Kleenex, your tissues are on the couch. And that's because the hippocampus associates things with spatial environments very well. But the 4th is my favorite, the 4th thing to make memory stick, and that is emotional resonance. So make it funny. That makes it emotionally resonant. You probably don't want to make it sad, but make it really happy and joyous. That will also stick in your memories because we do remember the happiest and saddest moments of our lives.
So this perfectly segues into my next question about emotional resonance. Is my understanding is if it's something really bad or really good, it creates the neurochemical environment to remember something better. And so, have you heard of a guy called Daniel Breivik?
No.
He's an opera singer
Oh,
who practices his songs and
yeah,
learns his pieces. I don't know what
yeah,
quite the vernacular is, but
yeah,
learns his operas
yeah.
before an ice bath. And sorry, he does it before an ice bath, then has an ice bath.
Mm,
And he's convinced it's anecdata, it's N
yeah,
of one sort of, or not N of one, it's a one-off scenario. But he's
yeah.
convinced that an ice bath after a strenuous cognitive bout of
Mm,
learning
mm-hmm.
could improve the acquisition of the learning. Is
Mm.
there any truth behind that? Is he onto something, or is that a bit far fetched?
Well, so um, the happiest and saddest things get remembered because a structure called the amygdala gets activated um, in both. It's known more for its activation during very traumatic, sad events, and the amygdala has a lot of connections with the hippocampus, and those connections are the ones that are making the memories being made in the hippocampus stick. I'm sure the amygdala gets activated during an ice bath, which is painful in a certain way. Yeah, it is painful. It's very challenging. So maybe he is able to do that. I don't think a lot of us can plunge into an ice bath after a learning bout, but he might. it might work, but I think he has the bones of what we do know is happening in in the neurobiology that we do know about.
Okay, good. I mean, I did want to ask you because he's hilarious to follow on Instagram, and he's always singing in an ice bath. So just he's fun regardless. Um, and I always think of this pathway when I see it on Instagram, and I've sort of tried it myself with learning different things, not necessarily opera because I can't sing, but I want to round off the learning thing with, if someone wants to get the most out of their brain and essentially try to sort of reach the ceiling of their own intellect and trying to be as smart as they can be,
Yeah.
what would you say to that person?
I think that that will require a healthy balance of kind of physical things that we've been talking about: exercise, meditation. We haven't mentioned nutrition or sleep, also critical for good brain health, and healthy, not boot camp like learning of new things, because again, use it or lose it. The more you activate those learning circuits and all the hippocampal work that has to happen when you learn something cognitive that's new, the better that your brain will get at learning new things. So I would say that is the formula: good health, do all the things that we know maximize brain health, together with a good kind of academic program that I'm also very familiar with, of regular learning.
Okay,
Sounds like an
brilliant.
academic. Well, actually, academics are not very good at the healthy lifestyle as much, but we're really good at learning lots of stuff.
But you're I mean, you practice what you preach, right? Both of those things you live and breathe every day.
Yes.
How many days a week?
How many what?
How many days a week do you exercise?
I try and do 7 days. I do 7 days a week, but on the days where I have early morning stuff, which happens, I do the workout, but for 10 minutes. But I found that building that habit muscle is so powerful. And that people say, "Ooh, 7 days a week." It's that was the core. Even if it's 5 minutes, 7 days a week, it will build up, and I will not lose that habit of pulling out the yoga mat or turning on the video, which I do both, to do something. And I wax and wane of how hard the workouts I choose, but I make it a habit. And for me, habit is 7 days a week.
Okay, great. That's super clear. With anxiety,
Yeah.
why is anxiety our superpower?
Anxiety is our superpower because evolutionarily, people don't realize that anxiety did not develop to just annoy us and to be the thing that, is the biggest pain in our whole life. But anxiety not developed, but it evolved to protect us. Ooh, that's an interesting word. To protect us from danger, to protect us from things that we should shy away from. That is understandable, shy away from global warming, shy away from the difficult conversation that you really don't want to have. But by leaning in to understanding what those things that you are protecting yourself from are, and importantly, not just the dangers out there, but what they reveal about what you hold dear, what is important to you. That's the most important thing, not the danger out there, but what you hold dear. By leaning into that is what helps make this protective emotion your superpower.
Okay, wonderful. And how can we use anxiety to be more in our favor?
Yeah. Okay. So, first step is the obvious one, because everybody's saying, yeah, well, my anxiety is going to help me at all. First, and that is correct, because typically anxiety is too high to be in the protective zone. There is a protective zone. I'm not saying every single form of anxiety out there is protective right now for you. Most of us, including me, need to turn the volume down on anxiety so it's not overwhelming, and that we can we can appreciate the warning capacity of it. So what helps? Well, we've talked about exercise is a great way to turn down anxiety. Breath meditation is a fast, very effective way to turn down anxiety. And if you want a fun one, calling your best and your funniest friend. Calling your funniest friend and having that funny conversation that you always have with your funniest friend. Also a quick, easy way to turn down your anxiety. There are lots of different examples that I give in my book about a toolbox to turn that anxiety down. But then to make it good, you need to then flip that anxiety. So now I'm going to say you got it to that good zone. There's an important step of when it's in the less overwhelming zone, where you can say, I'm so anxious about work, very common one. And you can leave it there, or you can say, which I tell myself because I do get anxious about work and deadlines, is that, it's because I care about my work and I care about doing well. And I care that I'm head of a college and I want the college to do well. Oh, that sounds better. You don't want to let it overwhelm you, but the positive value behind that anxiety, I like that. That makes me feel good. So that's one way to get it to good. But how do we get it to, as I try and argue in my book, to a superpower? And I know the title in the UK is Anxiety. Anxiety is your superpower.
In the UK,
in the
yes.
US, it's
But I can see
good
behind
anxiety.
you, American copy, right?
Yes, the American copy.
Called Good Anxiety for the listeners.
Good anxiety. So UK, how do you get to a superpower? Well, I describe in the book 6 different superpowers that come from your own specific kind of anxiety. Let me give 2 of my favorite examples of those 6. The first is superpower of productivity. Do you want to use your own anxiety to up your productivity? And of course, the answer is yes. So here's how you do it. And the simple, it's a mindset shift, is flipping your what if list, which is the anxiety provoking thing that happens all the time. It happens to me all the time. What if I didn't have that conversation well enough? What if my email wasn't clear enough, or my report wasn't good enough? All those what ifs. The trick is, which is a form of anxiety, flip that into a to-do list. So what if that email wasn't good enough? Reread it, rewrite the email, go back, make it better. What if my report wasn't good enough? Go back and get feedback. Do a better job next time. There are active things that one can do to address every single one of our what ifs that essentially not only resolve them, but you will find that they will make you more productive, because you will also notice that your what if list isn't around what you didn't watch on Netflix or what you didn't eat at the last meal. They are around the things you care about. Again, back to your values. So by actually going back and turning that what if into a to-do, you are truly making yourself more productive. And I love that. And that came from a lawyer who told me her take on it. I'm like, can I use that in my book? And she said, yes. So I have permission to use, this is her superpower of anxiety. That's the first one. The second superpower is the superpower of empathy. And this is when I discovered myself thinking about my oldest form of anxiety. And for me, it is a form of social anxiety, because as a young kid, I was very, very shy. Many young kids are, and had a hard time, introverted. I really wanted to ask questions in class because I was really interested in academics, as I still am, but always had that fear of raising my hand. Does that sound familiar? Everybody has a fear of raising my hand, but that was very palpable for me. I went into academia. And so one day I found myself in the front of the classroom and realizing, kind of subconsciously, this was a later realization, but even that first day, I had a subconscious understanding that everybody in the in the classroom had a question to ask me, but only a small subset were brave enough to raise their hand, because everybody has a fear that I'm going to say, that is an idiotic question. Why would you ask me that question? Which of course, no good teacher does. And so I realized that I would always try and come early and stay late to answer everybody's question, maybe not in the front of the classroom, but one-on-one, where it's easier to ask. That became my superpower. And so you don't have to want to be or be a teacher to have this. What you do is think about your most common form of anxiety or your oldest form of anxiety. Maybe it is asking questions in your staff meeting or in your, in your work meeting. That's a common one. And all you have to do is kind of look around, maybe look for the newbie or look for the introvert and encourage them or help them along. Just say a positive word. And you know what? That's going to make you feel so good. It's going to help yourself because you see how much your little word of help helps somebody else. And it's going to spread empathy in this world. And I love that because I think we all need more empathy in our lives.
100%. I agree with that massively. It's amazing how quantifiable this neuroscience is, and we're talking about the brain and
Yes.
randomized control studies, and everything has to be quantifiable. But it's amazing how much sort of, I guess, the squishier side of the things with the psychology and the
Yes.
positive psychology actually
Yes.
interact. How do you think about when you study this subject of, um, I guess you're studying the subject in a unidisciplinary way, but yet it's all tied to everything else when in regards to psychology and positive psychology and lots of other fields. Do you think there's value in other fields incorporating them into neuroscience and looking at it from more of a multidisciplinary angle?
Yes, I mean, that is any neuroscientist appreciates the value of multidisciplinarity because that's how neuroscience was kind of evolved. It's part psychology, part biology, part molecular biology, and neuroscientists are attracted to that multidisciplinary nature. And I think that is a broad theme in academia. How can the English department talk more meaningfully to the biology department? And in my own university, English and environmental studies are such a wonderful connection. There are that never would have happened 20 or 30 years ago. So that interdisciplinarity is something that so many different fields are embracing, and I'm proud to be a neuroscientist that embraced that kind of a while ago. But I mean, you're forced to. I mean, the more we learn, understand how much is connected to each other. I can't understand the neuroscience of exercise in the brain without understanding the psychology of exercise, because I need people to exercise to do my studies, and they all drop out because it's hard to continue exercising. So I need that understanding even to do my studies.
Yeah, I'm sure. Difficult but satisfactory,
Yes,
satisfying when it comes off. I'm sure. Um,
absolutely.
I'd love to touch gears on dementia and cognitive decline. I know it's an issue sort of reasonably close to home for you. So, with someone who has had exposure to this in their life, I know your father suffered
Yeah.
from this, if I'm right in saying.
Yeah.
What does your anti-cognitive decline protocol and system look like?
Yes, that is such a great question. I think I love seeing all of the more thought and more care around not just the patient themselves, but the caregivers to those patients who go through very, very stressful, very, very difficult emotional times during that care. And I love seeing the deeper thought around both those things. And I obviously have experience in both. So let me start with the science of how to keep your brain healthy. And that science is simple. It really is simple, and it stems from all the things that we have been talking about. Um, 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 and the one thing I need to add to show how simple it is that the two brain areas that are most affected in aging and dementia are the hippocampus, which we've talked about a lot, and the prefrontal cortex, the attention area and the memory area. What we've also said is that physical activity has immediate effects on your prefrontal cortex long-term effects on growing brand new fluffy brain cells in your hippocampus to make it big and fat and fluffy. And what I don't think we said explicitly is that long-term exercise has also been shown to grow the size of the prefrontal cortex, not by growing new cells, because that's not an area where new cells are born, but by increasing the size of the output structures of those neurons, which are the axons. So that means with regular exercise during your lifetime, and we have many, many, many years to start that exercise regimen, with each movement session, you have the potential to grow your hippocampus and prefrontal cortex and make them as big and fat and fluffy as you can, as early as you can. Now, that is not going to fight Alzheimer's disease, which is in my family's DNA. But it is going to take longer for Alzheimer's disease to start having a cognitive, a behavioral effect on my memory or my attention, because I have humongous hippocampi and I have a humongous prefrontal cortex. That is just that it's not a cure. It is a protection. So it is also a way to stave off for longer, more years in your golden years of good cognition. And that is something that every single person, talk about equity and inclusion. This is something that every person can do right now. Does everybody have access to walk? And even if you don't have, you have mobility issues, moving around, everybody has some capacity without paying any money to move more in your life. Move enough to increase your heart rate. That gets you on your way to staving off aging and neurodegenerative disease states. And that is the simplicity of this message that I discovered in doing this work and living my life with a family that is so much like so many other families that lives with dementia and Alzheimer's disease.
So exercise obviously being the massive free tool we can all use. How important is maintaining social connections?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to get your thoughts on that. And then also maybe learning new things as well, like as we age. You mentioned the beginner's mind. Incorporate. Sorry, my question would be, how important is social connection and maintaining a beginner's mind in cognitive function?
Okay, let me take social connection first. So social connection is critical for our longevity and for the happiness of our lives. So the longest running happiness study was started in the 1920s at Harvard. And my first invited lecturer for my deanship was the current director of that longest running study at Harvard, Robert Wallinger, who wrote a book about happiness. And so they asked people from starting with the Harvard students in the 20s who were all male at that time, and included John F. Kennedy actually was in the first group. So they followed them and their family members since the 1920s. And somewhere in there, they added not just the rich Harvard men, they added Harvard women and people in the Boston area that came from no means. And the thing that correlated with happiness most was the number and the number of your social connections that include the interaction that you might have with the Starbucks person as you're getting your coffee in the morning. Do you just, say the minimum, or you say, hey, how you doing? How's your day going? Those kind of social interactions count. And it doesn't have to be, the best friend that you've had for 30 years that you exchange gifts with every single year. They're the people that you stay in contact with. And doing podcasts keeps me in contact with surprising people in my life. Just this morning, I was emailed by my high school piano teacher because she heard me on a podcast, and my 87-year-old piano teacher. And so I'm extending my life because I get to do podcasts that increase my connections, my social connections, but meaningful social connections. She was a big part of my musical interlude in my life when I was a high school student. And it's so wonderful to hear what she's doing. And so the more social connections you have, the happier you are. And it's also correlated with the longer you live. So you want to live long? Yes, exercise. Yes, meditate, but connect with people. We are social beings, and I can't overstate the value of those social connections.
Okay, this is a great list. So we got exercise, we have meditate, maintain social connections, and actually, an interesting note on that is at different ages as well. I think is valuable. I mean,
Oh
gives you
yeah.
a lovely perspective. So yeah, I hope the reunion with the piano teacher is lovely. When it comes to maintaining a beginner's mind
Yeah.
and learning new things,
Mhm.
especially as we age, how important is that?
Very important. So if you're going to list those things that give positive brain plasticity, the positive growth of the brain, we've already talked about exercise. We've talked about meditation. I will put good anxiety or superpower like anxiety on that list. But the other critical thing that there's a lot of data for is new learning. Learning a new language, whatever age that you're doing it. Learning a new game, like a complex game like chess, great thing to do. Learning singing lessons, like I'm doing. Adopt that beginner's mindset, but remember, add that fun component. So don't make it too hard. Make it something that you love, that it's going to really enrich your life, and maybe it'll even bring more social connections into your life. So you get a twofer there. Very, very important. The learning component is important. And I would say the beginner's mindset just makes that learning more enjoyable. It's that mindset component that will perhaps make it more intentional. But instead of saying, oh God, I'm not 15 anymore, I can't learn how to sing. Instead say, I can learn to sing. I know anybody can learn. Ben, you can learn opera if you really wanted to.
Yeah, I've got the
So
ice bath outside, so I'm good. I'm ready to go.
that's right.
So, okay, so my understanding, if I'm hearing you correctly, is positive plasticity
Yeah.
uh, would reduce the odds of you developing, or at least would ward off developing Alzheimer's
Yes.
as effectively as you probably can.
Right.
Okay, right. So
Yes.
learning new
Absolutely.
things, taking up dancing. I'm going to be in the ice bath. I'm going to be singing soon.
That's right. Good. Good.
Wonderful. Okay, I'll keep you posted with that.
Good.
We're coming up to time here, and I just want to ask a few more questions with regards to the research around, I guess, brain health and warding off cognitive decline.
Yeah.
If you could know one thing,
Mhm.
you could wave a magic wand, and in 10 years' time, you've done that really cool study you want to do, or whatever it is. What would you want to know?
I would want to know the effect size of, um, I would really want to know the effect size of the best combo. I want to take people and I want to give them the best possible brain boosting life and see how much it changes their brain. And so that means all the things we've talking about. They exercise regularly, they meditate regularly, they have lots of friends, they sleep well, they have good nutrition, they have a lot of fun in their lives, and compare it to the rest of us that that have challenges in those areas, and really be able to quantify and start to get a handle on that prescription. So many startup companies are trying to answer that question.
When are you going to run the study?
Let me tell you, I'm working on it.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
working on
okay, cool. Watch this space. Say no more. Say
it.
no
Yeah.
more. Very good. Um, and what are you most excited about at the moment? It doesn't have to be with the research. Could be with your hobbies. Could be anything. Just what are you excited about at the moment?
I'm at this moment in time, as we are coming out of COVID, um, I'm very interested in the power of connection and belonging in brain health and brain capacity. I see a lot of people that are disconnected because we got disconnected, every single one of us, including myself, during the pandemic. And it's a new learning that I've never have to relearn that in my lifetime, but now we all do. In certain sense, we all feel a little bit more awkward at parties, like, oh, I get to be at a party with real people and not on little screens. um I think I I I'm really excited about the power of connection and belonging, which is a more specific question than social connection. Yeah, it's a category of social connection, but I see that as a very powerful tool to help new learning and help brain health in the 9,000 students that I'm responsible for.
Yeah, I'm sure. So actually, how with such a big group do you enable them to feel part of something, right? Is it so big? It's sort of, I imagine it's a bit of a challenge.
It is around making sure that they connect with the identity of the college, that we make sure that they get incorporated in this identity, which changed before and after COVID. It's not the same. We are evolving, and it is putting as much time and effort and care into their connection with their instructors, with their advisors, with each other, um, as we already do into their academic progression, and giving them that choice. I like to call the College of Arts and Science at NYU the school of endless possibilities. So many majors and minors. You can invent yourself. You're in New York City. You can be whoever, whatever you want, which is exciting, but a little scary too. So how can we, help all of our students do that in a joyful way is what I'm
Yeah,
trying
it's like trying to choose a film on Netflix. I imagine it's very, very hard, right? It's so much.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the whole paradox of choice thing is another tangent we probably won't get into, but interesting nonetheless.
Yes.
Easy to choose if you've got three things to do.
Right.
Um, when it comes to the whole use it or lose it thing, I think everyone anecdotally can relate to after COVID going back into a social environment and thinking, I forgot how to do this. This
Yeah.
is my intentions there. I'm enthusiastic, but nothing's happening. So yeah, you got to keep up those got to keep up that muscle.
That's right.
Last question for you,
Yeah.
Wendy, and thank you so much for this. It's been so fun. I really enjoyed it. Do you have any book recommendations for us, or anything that you've been enjoying reading at the moment, or perhaps a book that shaped your worldview? What would you say?
Um, that shaped my worldview. I'm going to go with the first thing that came to mind when you said that. Um, I love the writing of Elizabeth Strout, who who takes common, everyday, seemingly mundane conversations and gets at the emotional core of it. Um, and it almost makes you realize that any interaction that I have with somebody, if I, it, we can go really deep and um, share something meaningful that will be helpful for you, or you can do that for me. And we don't know. It's like a magic possibility that is out there. And I think about that because I just saw a play off Broadway called What Became of Them, about an immigrant brother and sister, and their journey from young children to old elderly people. And it reminded me a lot about those meaningful conversations, or the lack of conversation, or when you didn't say something that you really should have said something, and how important those are. And I think Elizabeth Strout is one of the masters of pointing that out in a deep way.
Well, I'm pleased I asked. I haven't heard of her work, but I'll definitely check it out. I think there's so much power we can have in sort of reading broadly, and
Yes.
sort of getting outside our silo. Uh, Dr. Wendy Suzuki, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people find you and keep up with your work? I will mention Anxiety is a Superpower,
Mhm.
book in the UK. In America, it's called Good Anxiety, if I'm right.
Yeah, it's called Good Anxiety. And the best place to find out about me, I'm going to mention too, go to www.wendysuzuki.com. And the other place that I'm very active these days with regular posts about mindfulness and about brain health and brain anatomy is my Instagram page, which is wendy.suzuki. And I'll mention one last thing, which is coming up very soon. I have a course on masterclass coming out called Brain Health. And that's coming out on June 13th, 2024. So excited about it. It covers some of the same topics that we've covered here today. That I also get to present with another psychologist and a nutritionist. So there's lots of good recipes in there as well. But really excited for that to come out.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to sign up. Where's the link? I'm there. Dr. Wendy Suzuki, that was a real privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ben. Such a pleasure to talk to you.